Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates spent their weekends at shopping malls or movie theaters, she found herself at the local shooting range with her grandfather, a retired Marine who believed that discipline and precision were the foundations of character. The smell of gunpowder and the sharp crack of rifles became as familiar to her as the sound of her own heartbeat. Growing up in a small town in Montana, Sarah learned early that life wasn't always fair, especially for someone like her. Her father had left when she was 8, unable to handle the responsibility of raising a child with what he called too much attitude. Her mother, Elena, worked 2 jobs just to keep their modest apartment and put food on the table. It was during those long, lonely afternoons when her mother was at work that Sarah's grandfather, Miguel, became her anchor. Miguel Martinez had served 3 tours in Vietnam and carried stories that he rarely shared with anyone. But with Sarah, something was different. Perhaps it was the way she listened without judgment, or how her eyes lit up when he explained the mechanics of marksmanship. He saw something in her that reminded him of himself at that age, a hunger for purpose, for something greater than the circumstances that seemed determined to hold her down. Mija, he would say, adjusting her stance at the range, shooting isn't about the gun. It's about your mind, your breath, your heart. Everything has to work together like a symphony. Sarah absorbed every word. By the time she was 14, she could outshoot most of the adults who frequented the range. The local gun shop owner, Bill Henderson, began to take notice. He'd seen plenty of kids come through over the years, but none with Sarah's natural ability and unwavering focus. You know, Bill told Miguel one afternoon as they watched Sarah hit target after target at increasingly difficult distances, "There's something special about that girl. I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone with her natural talent." Miguel nodded, pride swelling in his chest. "She's got the gift, but more importantly, she's got the heart. That's what makes the difference." As Sarah entered high school, her reputation as an exceptional marksman began to spread beyond their small town. The high school rifle team, which had been struggling for years, suddenly found itself with a star player. Coach Thompson, a former Army sergeant, was amazed by Sarah's consistency and composure under pressure. "Martinez," he called out during her first practice, "I want you to try something different today." He pointed to a target set up at 800 meters, nearly twice the distance of their usual competitions. "Let's see what you can do." Sarah approached the firing line with the calm confidence that had become her trademark. She settled into position, controlled her breathing, and let the world around her fade away. In that moment, there was only her, the rifle, and the target in the distance. The shot rang out, crisp and clean, and when they checked the target, the bullet had found its mark dead center. The other team members stood in stunned silence. Coach Thompson shook his head in disbelief. "In 20 years of coaching, I've never seen anything like that," he muttered. Word of Sarah's exceptional abilities began to reach beyond their small community. College recruiters started calling, offering scholarships for shooting sports programs. But it was a different kind of opportunity that would change everything. During her senior year, a man in a crisp uniform appeared at one of her competitions. Commander James Mitchell was a Navy SEAL who had been tasked with identifying exceptional talent for a new program. The military was looking for individuals with unique skills who could contribute to specialized operations. Commander Mitchell watched Sarah compete that day, noting not just her accuracy, but her composure under pressure. While other competitors showed signs of nervousness, fidgeting, checking equipment repeatedly, taking practice shots, Sarah remained perfectly calm. She approached each shot with methodical precision, treating the state championship as if it were just another day at the range with her grandfather. When the final scores were tallied, Sarah had not only won, but had broken the state record by a margin that left spectators and competitors alike speechless. It was then that Commander Mitchell approached her and her mother after the ceremony. "Ms. Martinez," he said, his voice carrying the authority of years of command, "I'm Commander Mitchell with the Navy SEALs. I'd like to speak with you about an opportunity that could change your life." Elena Martinez looked skeptical. She had worked hard to keep her daughter focused on education and a normal life, despite the extraordinary circumstances they had faced. The military represented uncertainty, danger, and separation from the family she had fought so hard to keep together. "My daughter is going to college," Elena said firmly. "She's earned scholarships, and she's going to get her education." Commander Mitchell nodded respectfully. "I understand your concerns, Mrs. Martinez, and I respect your priorities. But what I'm offering isn't just military service. This is about utilizing exceptional talents for purposes that could save lives and serve our country in ways that most people never could." Sarah listened to the conversation, torn between her mother's dreams for her future and the pull of something that felt like destiny. Her grandfather had always told her that true purpose comes from using your gifts to serve something greater than yourself. That night, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the path that had led her to this moment. Every target she had hit, every lesson her grandfather had taught her, every moment of discipline and focus had been building towards something. She just hadn't known what until now. The next morning, she found her mother in the kitchen, coffee cup in hand, staring out the window at the mountains that surrounded their town. Elena had been up most of the night, wrestling with her own demons and fears. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, "I need to talk to you about something." Elena turned, seeing in her daughter's eyes the same determination that had carried them through the hardest times of their lives. "You've already made your decision, haven't you?" Sarah nodded. "This isn't just about shooting, Mom. It's about everything Grandpa taught me about duty, honor, and using your abilities to make a difference. I can go to college anytime, but this opportunity, it might never come again." Over the following weeks, Sarah underwent a series of evaluations that tested not only her marksmanship, but her psychological resilience, physical fitness, and ability to function under extreme stress. Each test seemed designed to push her beyond her limits, but instead of breaking her down, they revealed new depths of capability she didn't know she possessed. The psychological evaluation was particularly intense. Dr. Rebecca Stone, a military psychologist, probed Sarah's motivations, her relationship with violence, and her ability to make life and death decisions under pressure. "Tell me about the first time you held a gun," Dr. Stone asked during one of their sessions. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering that day when she was 9 years old. "My grandfather took me to the range after my father left. I was angry, confused, and I felt powerless. When he put that rifle in my hands and taught me how to control it, how to make it do exactly what I intended, it was the first time I felt like I had any control over anything in my life." Dr. Stone made notes, recognizing the psychological profile of someone who had found empowerment through mastery of a skill. "And how do you feel about the possibility of using that skill in combat situations?" It was a question Sarah had wrestled with extensively. "I understand that what I'm being asked to do might require me to take lives," she said quietly. "I don't take that lightly. But if my abilities can save the lives of our soldiers, if they can protect innocent people, then I believe I have an obligation to use them." The physical training was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. While she had always been in good shape from years of competitive shooting, the demands of special operations required a completely different level of fitness. She found herself running before dawn, doing endless sets of push-ups and pull-ups, and learning combat skills that seemed worlds away from the quiet precision of target shooting. Her drill instructor, Sergeant First Class Maria Rodriguez, was a tough-as-nails veteran who had served multiple deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq. She had been specifically chosen to work with Sarah because she understood the unique challenges faced by women in special operations. "Martinez," Sergeant Rodriguez barked during a particularly grueling training exercise, "what you're learning here isn't about proving you're as tough as the men. It's about proving you're tougher, because that's what it's going to take." Sarah pushed herself harder than she ever had before, driven by a combination of personal determination and the knowledge that she was representing something larger than herself. She was carrying the hopes of her family, the lessons of her grandfather, and the weight of expectations from people who believed in her potential. As weeks turned into months, Sarah began to understand that what she was being prepared for went far beyond conventional military service. The program she had been selected for was developing new approaches to long-range precision operations, utilizing technology and techniques that were at the cutting edge of military capability. Commander Mitchell, who had become her primary mentor throughout the process, explained the broader context during one of their regular briefings. "What we're developing here isn't just about having the best marksman," he said. "It's about creating capabilities that can change the outcome of conflicts with minimal risk to our personnel and civilians." The technology component of her training was particularly fascinating. Sarah learned to work with advanced optics, ballistics computers, and environmental sensors that could calculate factors she had never even considered. Wind patterns at multiple altitudes, atmospheric pressure changes, even the rotation of the Earth became variables in equations that determined the trajectory of her shots. But perhaps the most challenging aspect of her training was learning to work as part of a team. Throughout her life, shooting had been a solitary pursuit, just her rifle, and the target. Now she had to coordinate with spotters, communicate with commanders, and integrate her actions with complex mission objectives. Her teammate and spotter, Corporal Jason Webb, was a former Marine Scout sniper who had initially been skeptical about working with someone so young and inexperienced in combat. However, after seeing Sarah's abilities firsthand, he became one of her strongest supporters. "I've worked with some of the best shooters in the military," Webb told Commander Mitchell after their first joint exercise. "But Martinez is something else entirely. She doesn't just hit targets. She makes shots that shouldn't be possible." As Sarah's training progressed, word of her exceptional abilities began to spread through the special operations community. Stories of impossible shots made under challenging conditions became legend among those cleared to know about the program. But it was one particular training exercise that would set the stage for everything that was to come. The exercise was designed to simulate a real-world scenario where precision shooting could prevent a larger conflict. Sarah was positioned at extreme range with instructions to neutralize a specific target while avoiding civilian casualties. The distance was 2,400 meters, nearly a mile and a half, under challenging weather conditions with multiple variables that would test every skill she had developed. As Sarah settled into position, she felt the familiar calm that had always preceded her best shots. She calculated wind speed, humidity, temperature, and dozens of other factors that would affect the bullet's trajectory over such an extreme distance. Her spotter provided additional data, but ultimately, the shot would come down to her ability to synthesize all of that information into a single moment of perfect execution. The target appeared in her scope, a figure barely visible at such extreme range. Sarah controlled her breathing, let her heart rate settle, and slowly began to apply pressure to the trigger. The shot seemed to hang in the air forever, the bullet traveling for what felt like an eternity before finding its mark with devastating accuracy. The silence that followed was broken by Webb's voice over the radio. "Target neutralized. Shot confirmed at 2,400 meters." It was a shot that would have been considered impossible just a few years earlier. But for Sarah, it represented the culmination of everything she had learned and trained for. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, though she had no idea that her next mission would push her abilities beyond anything she had ever imagined. Commander Mitchell approached her position with an expression that mixed pride with something that looked almost like concern. "Outstanding work, Martinez," he said. "But I hope you're ready, because what we have planned next is going to test everything you've learned and more." As Sarah packed up her equipment, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. From a young girl learning discipline at a small-town shooting range to a precision shooter capable of making shots that defied conventional understanding of what was possible. Every step had been preparation for something greater. She had no way of knowing that within weeks, she would find herself in a situation where a single shot at an even greater distance would not only test her skills, but potentially save lives and change the course of a mission that had gone dangerously wrong. The unthinkable shot that would leave even a seasoned SEAL commander in shock was still ahead of her, waiting in the mountains of a distant land where precision and courage would mean the difference between success and catastrophe. The transport helicopter cut through the thin mountain air, carrying Sarah and her team toward what would become the most challenging mission of her young career. 3 months had passed since her record-breaking training shot, and now she found herself deployed to the rugged mountains of Afghanistan, where intelligence had located a high-value target whose elimination could save countless lives. The mission briefing had been sobering. Commander Mitchell, along with intelligence officer Captain Lisa Chun, had outlined a scenario that required unprecedented precision under impossible conditions. A terrorist leader responsible for coordinating attacks against civilian populations had taken refuge in a compound built into the side of a mountain. The location was strategically chosen, surrounded by innocent villagers and positioned in such a way that conventional assault would result in massive civilian casualties. This isn't just another precision strike, Commander Mitchell had explained during the final briefing. The target will be protected by multiple layers of security, surrounded by non-combatants, and positioned at a distance that pushes the absolute limits of what we consider possible in battlefield conditions. Captain Chun had pulled up satellite imagery showing the target location. The compound is built into a cliff face, approximately 2,600 meters from the nearest feasible shooting position. Weather conditions are unpredictable, with wind patterns that change rapidly due to the mountain terrain. You'll have one opportunity, maybe two if we're lucky, before enemy forces locate your position. Sarah studied the images, her mind automatically calculating angles, wind patterns, and the countless variables that would affect such an extreme-range shot. At 2,600 meters, she would be pushing beyond the theoretical limits of even the most advanced rifle systems. The bullet would be in flight for over 3 seconds, during which any number of factors could cause a miss. Her spotter for this mission was Staff Sergeant Marcus Thompson, a veteran of multiple deployments who had initially requested assignment to a different team when he learned he would be working with someone so young. However, after reviewing footage of Sarah's training performance, he had changed his tune completely. "I've seen the impossible shots you made in training," Thompson told her during their pre-mission equipment check. "But this is different. This is combat, with real bullets coming back at us, real consequences if we miss, and real people whose lives depend on us getting this right the first time." Sarah nodded, understanding the weight of what they were attempting. "I know the difference between training and combat," she replied quietly. "My grandfather served 3 tours in Vietnam. He taught me that when lives are on the line, you don't get the luxury of doubt or fear. You just do what needs to be done." The helicopter touched down at their insertion point just before dawn, the rotors barely audible over the howling mountain wind. Sarah and Thompson quickly gathered their equipment and moved toward their designated shooting position, a rocky outcropping that provided clear line of sight to the target compound while offering concealment from enemy observation. The hike to their position took nearly 2 hours, climbing through terrain that seemed designed to test human endurance. The thin air at high altitude made every step a struggle, and the weight of their equipment added to the challenge. Sarah's rifle case alone contained a weapon system worth more than most people's cars, equipped with optics and ballistic computers that represented the cutting edge of military technology. As they reached their position, Thompson immediately began setting up observation equipment, while Sarah prepared her rifle. The weapon itself was a marvel of engineering, a custom-built system designed specifically for extreme-range precision shooting. The barrel was manufactured to tolerances measured in fractions of thousandths of an inch, and the ammunition was hand-loaded to specifications that ensured perfect consistency. Range to target confirmed at 2,587 meters, Thompson reported through their encrypted communication system. "Wind speed at our position is 8 knots from the southwest, but satellite data shows variable conditions between here and target." Sarah settled into her shooting position, adjusting her bipod and checking her scope settings. Through the powerful optics, she could see the compound clearly despite the extreme distance. The building appeared to be carved directly from the mountain rock, with multiple levels connected by narrow walkways that would provide limited opportunities for a clear shot. Intelligence reports that the target maintains a routine, came the voice of their mission controller over the radio. He appears on the upper balcony every morning at approximately 0700 hours for a communication check with his subordinates. You'll have a window of roughly 30 seconds before he moves back inside. Sarah checked her watch. It was 6:45 a.m. local time, giving her 15 minutes to finalize her calculations and prepare for the shot. She began running through her mental checklist, the same routine she had followed thousands of times in training, but which now carried the weight of life and death. The ballistic computer integrated into her scope system provided data on bullet trajectory, but at such extreme range, even the most sophisticated technology could only account for so many variables. The final calculations would come down to her experience, intuition, and the skills her grandfather had begun teaching her so many years ago. Atmospheric pressure is dropping, Thompson reported, monitoring weather conditions that could affect the bullet's flight path. Temperature is steady at -12 Celsius, humidity at 38%. Sarah made minor adjustments to her scope settings, compensating for the changing conditions. At 2,600 meters, even a small change in atmospheric pressure could cause a miss by several feet. The margin for error was essentially zero. The target would be visible for only seconds, and there would be no opportunity for a follow-up shot if the first one missed. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah felt herself entering the mental state that had served her so well throughout her training. The chaos and uncertainty of the battlefield began to fade away, replaced by a calm focus that narrowed her entire world down to the relationship between her rifle, the target, and the complex calculations required to bring them together. Movement in the compound, Thompson whispered. Multiple figures on the lower level. Our target should appear on the upper balcony any moment now. Sarah controlled her breathing, letting her heart rate settle into the slow, steady rhythm that would minimize any movement when she fired. Through her scope, she could see guards moving through the compound, but the upper balcony remained empty. Everything depended on the intelligence being accurate about the target's routine. At exactly 7 a.m., a figure appeared on the upper balcony. Thompson immediately began confirmation procedures, comparing the person's appearance to photographs from their intelligence briefing. Target identified, he confirmed after several seconds of observation. Adult male, matching description, wearing distinctive clothing from the briefing photos. Sarah's crosshairs settled on the figure, who appeared impossibly small at such distance, even through her powerful scope. The target was moving casually, completely unaware that he was being observed from nearly 2.5 kilometers away. He appeared to be speaking into a communication device, probably coordinating with subordinates as intelligence had predicted. Wind has shifted slightly, Thompson reported, now showing 7 knots from the west-southwest. Adjust accordingly. Sarah made the minute adjustment to her aim point, compensating for the wind that would affect the bullet during its 3-second flight. At such extreme range, even a small error in wind calculation could cause the bullet to miss by yards rather than inches. You have a clear shot, Thompson confirmed. Target is stationary. Conditions are as good as they're going to get. Sarah's finger found the trigger as she ran through her final mental checklist. Breathing controlled, heart rate steady, wind compensation calculated, range confirmed, atmospheric conditions accounted for. In her mind, she could hear her grandfather's voice reminding her that shooting wasn't about the gun, it was about the harmony between mind, body, and purpose. The target moved slightly, leaning against the balcony railing in a position that provided the clear shot Sarah would likely get. She began to apply pressure to the trigger, feeling the familiar resistance that preceded the moment of firing. Then, just as she was about to complete the trigger pull, everything changed. The sound of approaching helicopters echoed off the mountain walls, and the target immediately began moving toward the interior of the compound. Their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Enemy air support inbound, came the urgent voice of their mission controller. Multiple aircraft, ETA 3 minutes to your position. Take the shot now or abort mission. Sarah watched through her scope as the target paused at the balcony entrance, apparently trying to determine the source of the helicopter sounds. He was partially concealed now, with only a portion of his torso visible through the narrow opening. It was a much more difficult shot than they had planned for, requiring precision that pushed even beyond her exceptional abilities. "I don't have a clear shot," she reported. "Target is partially concealed, and the angle has changed. You need to take what you can get," Thompson urged. "Those helicopters will be on us in 2 minutes, and once they arrive, this opportunity is gone forever." Sarah fought against the urge to rush, knowing that a hasty shot at such extreme range would almost certainly miss. Through her scope, she could see the target beginning to move toward the interior of the building. In seconds, he would be completely out of sight, and the mission would be a failure. It was then that the target made a critical mistake. Apparently curious about the approaching helicopters, he stepped back onto the balcony and looked skyward, presenting Sarah with a clear view of his upper torso. The shot was still incredibly difficult. The angle was awkward, the wind conditions less than ideal, and the time pressure enormous. But it was possible. Target exposed, Thompson confirmed. Clear shot available. Sarah settled her crosshairs on the target's center mass, compensating for all the variables she had calculated and recalculated over the past several minutes. The sound of approaching helicopters was growing louder, adding an element of urgency that threatened to disrupt her concentration. But in that moment, all of her training took over. The noise faded away, the pressure disappeared, and there was only the familiar calm that had guided her through countless successful shots. She controlled her breathing one final time and began the smooth trigger pull that would send a bullet across nearly 2.5 kilometers of mountain air. The rifle fired with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding peaks. Sarah remained in position, watching through her scope as the bullet began its 3-second journey toward the target. Time seemed suspended as she tracked the target through her optics, waiting to see if her calculations had been correct. The helicopters were getting closer, and she could hear Thompson preparing their equipment for rapid extraction. Whether her shot had been successful or not, they would have to leave this position immediately to avoid being overrun by enemy forces. Through her scope, Sarah continued to watch the balcony where the target had been standing. The figure remained motionless for what seemed like an eternity, and for a moment she wondered if she had somehow missed entirely. Then, slowly, the target crumpled and disappeared from view. "Target down," Thompson confirmed, his voice filled with amazement. "I can't believe it, but target is definitely down." Shot confirmed at 2,587 meters. The confirmation of her successful shot was almost immediately overshadowed by the arrival of enemy helicopters, their rotors thundering as they searched the mountain for the source of the shot that had just eliminated their leader. Sarah and Thompson quickly broke down their equipment and began moving toward their extraction point, knowing that their survival now depended on reaching safety before enemy forces could locate them. As they moved through the rocky terrain, Sarah reflected on what had just happened. She had successfully made a shot that most experts would have considered impossible, under combat conditions that made the achievement even more remarkable. The bullet had traveled for over 3 seconds through mountain air, compensating for wind, altitude, temperature, and countless other variables before finding its target with lethal precision. But even as pride began to swell in her chest, Sarah was already thinking about what came next. The successful completion of this mission would undoubtedly lead to more assignments, more impossible shots, more situations where her unique abilities would be the difference between success and failure. The sound of their extraction helicopter approaching from the valley below meant that they had successfully completed their mission and would live to fight another day. But Sarah knew that this shot, this moment, would define her career and establish her as one of the most capable precision shooters in military history. What she didn't know was that Commander Mitchell, monitoring the mission from a command post hundreds of miles away, was sitting in stunned silence, trying to process what he had just witnessed. A 2,587-meter shot under combat conditions was beyond anything he had thought possible, even from someone with Sarah's exceptional abilities. The young woman who had started this journey as a small-town girl learning discipline from her grandfather had just accomplished something that would be talked about in military circles for decades to come. But the full impact of her achievement and the way it would change both her life and the capabilities of Special Operations Forces was still to be fully understood. The extraction helicopter lifted off from the mountain valley, carrying Sarah and Thompson away from what would become one of the most talked-about missions in Special Operations history. As the aircraft gained altitude, Sarah stared out at the rugged landscape below, her mind still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The successful 2,587-meter shot had not only eliminated a high-value target, but had also pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible in modern warfare. Commander Mitchell's voice crackled through her headset as the helicopter headed toward their forward operating base. "Outstanding work, Martinez. That was unprecedented. We'll have a full debrief once you're back at base, but I want you to know that what you accomplished today will have implications far beyond this single mission." The flight back to base gave Sarah time to reflect on the journey that had brought her to this point. Less than 2 years ago, she had been a high school student in Montana, her biggest concern being college applications and maintaining her shooting scholarship eligibility. Now, she was part of an elite military unit, having just completed a mission that would likely remain classified for decades. Thompson, sitting across from her in the helicopter, shook his head in amazement. "You know, Martinez, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you just pulled off. That shot was beyond textbook. It was something else entirely." When they arrived at the forward operating base, Sarah was surprised to find a small crowd of personnel waiting for them. Word of the successful mission had already spread through the Special Operations community, and the details of the extreme-range shot had captured the imagination of soldiers and officers who understood just how difficult such a feat truly was. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the base commander, approached Sarah as she disembarked from the helicopter. "Sergeant Martinez, I've been in the military for 25 years, and I've never had the privilege of witnessing a mission report like the one I just received. You've accomplished something that will be studied and remembered for generations." The formal debrief took place in a secure conference room with Commander Mitchell, Colonel Hayes, and several intelligence officers reviewing every aspect of the mission. Sarah walked them through her calculations, decision-making process, and the environmental factors that had influenced her shot placement. "The wind conditions were the most challenging aspect," Sarah explained, pointing to weather data displayed on a large screen. At that distance, even a small miscalculation in wind compensation could have resulted in a miss by several meters. The ballistic computer provided baseline data, but ultimately it came down to reading the environmental cues and trusting my training. Dr. Rebecca Stone, the psychologist who had evaluated Sarah during her initial selection process, was present for the debrief. She was particularly interested in Sarah's mental state during the high-pressure moments of the mission. "Tell me about your thought process when the enemy helicopters were approaching and you had to take a more difficult shot than originally planned," Dr. Stone asked. Sarah considered the question carefully. "I think that's when all the training really paid off. In that moment, I couldn't afford to think about the pressure or the consequences of missing. I had to trust my preparation and focus entirely on executing the shot I had trained for thousands of times." Colonel Hayes leaned forward in her chair. "The implications of what you've accomplished go far beyond this single mission. You've demonstrated capabilities that could revolutionize how we approach certain types of operations. The ability to eliminate high-value targets at extreme range with minimal risk to our personnel and surrounding civilians opens up tactical possibilities we've never had before." Commander Mitchell nodded in agreement. "We're already receiving requests from other command structures who want to understand how we can replicate these capabilities. The question is whether what Martinez accomplished is something that can be trained and developed in others, or if it represents a unique combination of natural talent and specific circumstances." Over the following days, Sarah found herself at the center of intense interest from military leadership, weapons manufacturers, and tactical experts who wanted to understand exactly how she had accomplished what many considered impossible. Engineers from the company that manufactured her rifle system arrived to study the weapon and ammunition that had been used for the record-breaking shot. Dr. Amanda Foster, a ballistics expert from the Army Research Laboratory, spent hours with Sarah analyzing every aspect of the shot. According to our computer models, Dr. Foster explained, a 2,587-meter shot under the environmental conditions you faced should have been impossible with current technology. Yet you succeeded not just once, but consistently during training. We need to understand what variables were missing in our calculations. The technical analysis revealed something remarkable. While Sarah's equipment was certainly advanced, it wasn't substantially different from what other elite marksmen had access to. The difference appeared to be in Sarah's ability to process and compensate for environmental variables that existing technology couldn't fully account for. It's almost like she has an intuitive understanding of ballistics that goes beyond what can be programmed into a computer, Dr. Foster told Commander Mitchell during one of their technical review sessions. She's making calculations and compensations that our most sophisticated systems miss. This realization led to a new phase of Sarah's military career. Rather than simply being deployed on additional missions, she became the centerpiece of an advanced research program designed to understand and potentially replicate her exceptional capabilities. The program brought together experts from multiple disciplines, ballistics engineers, psychologists, physiologists, and tactical specialists, all working to decode the elements that made her performance so extraordinary. Dr. Sarah Kim, a neuroscientist specializing in motor control and spatial processing, conducted extensive testing of Sarah's cognitive abilities. What we're finding is fascinating, Dr. Kim explained to Sarah after a series of tests. Your brain processes spatial and temporal information in ways that are measurably different from even other elite marksmen. You're essentially performing complex, three-dimensional calculus instantaneously, without conscious effort. The research revealed that Sarah possessed a rare combination of visual processing speed, spatial awareness, and motor control that allowed her to make micro-adjustments to her shooting technique in real time. While other marksmen relied primarily on technology and pre-calculated data, Sarah was continuously processing environmental feedback and adjusting her aim accordingly. This discovery led to the development of new training methods and technological systems designed to help other marksmen develop similar capabilities. Sarah found herself in the unique position of being both a student and a teacher, learning about her own abilities while helping others develop their skills. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Brooks, who had been assigned to oversee the research program, was amazed by the implications of what they were discovering. We're not just looking at improved marksmanship, he explained to senior military leadership. We're potentially looking at a fundamental advancement in human-machine interface that could have applications far beyond shooting. As word of the research spread through military and academic circles, Sarah began receiving attention that made her uncomfortable. She had joined the military to serve her country and use her abilities to make a difference, not to become the subject of scientific study and media attention. The situation became more complex when details of her record-breaking shot began to leak into public awareness. While the specific mission details remained classified, the fact that an American servicewoman had made an unprecedented long-range shot began to capture public imagination. Sarah's mother, Elena, called her after seeing a news report that mentioned an unnamed female marksman who had accomplished something extraordinary in Afghanistan. Mija, they're talking about you on the news. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, but I'm also scared about what this means for your safety and privacy. The conversation with her mother reminded Sarah of why she had chosen this path in the first place. It wasn't about setting records or advancing technology. It was about using her abilities to protect people and serve something greater than herself. The attention and acclaim, while flattering, were secondary to her core mission. Commander Mitchell, who had become something of a mentor to Sarah, recognized her discomfort with the growing attention. "I know this isn't what you signed up for," he told her during one of their regular meetings. "But you have to understand that what you've accomplished has implications that go beyond your personal preferences. You've opened up possibilities that could save countless lives and change how we approach certain types of conflicts." Sarah understood the logic of his argument, but she also felt the weight of expectations that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. She had gone from being a small-town girl with exceptional shooting skills to being the centerpiece of advanced military research programs and a symbol of American military capability. The pressure intensified when she was informed that she would be receiving several high-level military decorations for her actions during the Afghanistan mission. The ceremony would be attended by senior military leadership and would likely attract significant media attention. "I don't want a ceremony," Sarah told Commander Mitchell. "I did my job, nothing more. The real heroes are the people who put their lives on the line every day in infantry units and support roles." But the decision was largely out of her hands. The military leadership had determined that recognizing her achievement publicly would serve important strategic purposes, demonstrating American military capabilities while honoring exceptional service. As the date for the ceremony approached, Sarah found herself struggling with conflicting emotions. She was proud of what she had accomplished and understood its significance, but she also yearned for the simplicity of her earlier life when her biggest concern was hitting targets at the local shooting range with her grandfather. The research program continued to yield fascinating insights into human performance and the potential for enhancing military capabilities. Sarah's brain scans showed unusual patterns of activity in regions associated with spatial processing and motor control, suggesting that her abilities might have both natural and trained components. Dr. Kim presented her findings to a conference of military researchers. "What we're seeing in Sergeant Martinez represents a convergence of natural talent, intensive training, and psychological factors that create performance capabilities we previously thought impossible. The question is whether we can identify others with similar potential and develop training methods to enhance these abilities." This question led to the establishment of a new selection and training program designed to identify and develop extreme-range marksmanship capabilities in other service members. Sarah was asked to help design the curriculum and serve as a primary instructor for candidates who showed exceptional promise. Teaching other marksmen proved to be both rewarding and challenging for Sarah. She discovered that many of the techniques she used intuitively were difficult to explain and even harder for others to replicate. Her approach to reading environmental conditions and making real-time adjustments required a level of spatial awareness that couldn't simply be taught through traditional methods. "The hardest part about teaching this," Sarah told Dr. Foster during one of their development sessions, "is that so much of what I do happens automatically. I don't consciously calculate wind speed or atmosphere pressure. I just know how they feel and how they'll affect the shot." This insight led to the development of new training technologies designed to help students develop similar intuitive capabilities. Virtual reality systems were created that could simulate the environmental conditions of extreme-range shooting, allowing trainees to practice under conditions that would be impossible to replicate on conventional ranges. As the program progressed, Sarah began to see early successes among her students. While none of them achieved her level of capability, several showed marked improvement in their ability to make successful shots at distances previously considered impossible for their skill levels. The success of the training program attracted attention from allied militaries, who requested access to the techniques and technologies being developed. Sarah found herself working with marksmen from countries around the world, sharing knowledge that could enhance their capabilities and strengthen military partnerships. But even as the program expanded and evolved, Sarah never forgot the core mission that had brought her to this point. Every technological advancement, every training innovation, every breakthrough in understanding was ultimately about protecting innocent lives and giving military personnel the tools they needed to complete their mission successfully. The girl who had learned to shoot at a small-town range with her grandfather had become a catalyst for advancing military capabilities on a global scale. Yet, as she prepared for the medal ceremony that would officially recognize her achievement, Sarah remained focused on the simple truth that had guided her from the beginning. Exceptional abilities carry with them exceptional responsibilities, and the greatest honor comes not from recognition, but from using those abilities in service of others. The medal ceremony took place on a crisp autumn morning at the Pentagon, with representatives from every branch of the military in attendance. Sarah stood in her dress uniform, feeling uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding the significance of the moment. The months following her record-breaking shot had been a whirlwind of research, training development, and recognition that had fundamentally changed both her life and her understanding of her role in the military. General Patricia Williams, the first woman to serve as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, presented Sarah with the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration for extraordinary heroism. As the medal was pinned to her uniform, Sarah thought about her grandfather Miguel, who had passed away just 2 months earlier, having lived long enough to see his granddaughter achieve something he had always believed was possible. Sergeant Martinez, General Williams, said as the ceremony concluded, "Your achievement represents more than exceptional marksmanship. It demonstrates the evolution of military capability and the extraordinary potential that exists when natural talent meets rigorous training and unwavering dedication." The ceremony was attended by Sarah's mother, Elena, who had traveled from Montana to witness her daughter's recognition. Seeing her mother in the audience, Sarah was reminded of how far they had both come from those difficult years when Elena worked multiple jobs to keep their family together. The woman who had once feared that her daughter's military service would take her away forever now understood that Sarah had found her true calling. After the official ceremony, a smaller gathering took place where Sarah was introduced to senior military leadership and defense officials who had been following the research program that had grown out of her exceptional abilities. The conversations revealed just how much her single shot had influenced military thinking and strategic planning. Secretary of Defense Robert Chun approached Sarah during the reception. "Sergeant Martinez, I want you to understand that what you accomplished in Afghanistan has implications far beyond that single mission. You've opened up tactical possibilities that are already influencing how we approach certain types of conflicts." The research program that had been built around understanding Sarah's capabilities had indeed yielded remarkable results. Dr. Kim's neuroscience research had led to breakthroughs in understanding human spatial processing that had applications beyond military marksmanship. The training methods developed for extreme-range shooting were being adapted for other precision-based military specialties. Colonel Brooks, who continued to oversee the research program, provided Sarah with an update on its progress. "We now have 12 marksmen who can consistently make shots beyond 2,000 meters under favorable conditions," he reported. "While none have reached your 2,600-meter capability, the overall enhancement in long-range precision across our special operations units has been dramatic." More importantly for Sarah, the program had begun to save lives in real-world operations. The enhanced capabilities of marksmen trained in the new methods had already prevented several situations that would have required larger-scale military interventions, reducing both military and civilian casualties. Commander Mitchell, who had been promoted to captain following the success of the program he had initiated, remains Sarah's primary mentor and advocate within the military hierarchy. "The ripple effects of what you started are still expanding," he told her during a private conversation after the ceremony. "But I want to make sure you're prepared for what comes next." What came next was an assignment that would test not only Sarah's shooting abilities, but her leadership skills as well. She was being promoted to staff sergeant and given command of a new unit specifically designed to handle extreme-range precision operations. The unit would combine the most promising graduates of her training program with advanced technology and intelligence capabilities. "This isn't just about being the best marksman anymore," Captain Mitchell explained. "You're going to be responsible for developing and leading a capability that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The decisions you make will affect not just your own missions, but how this technology and these techniques are used globally. Sarah accepted the assignment with the same quiet determination that had characterized her approach to every challenge she had faced. But privately, she wondered if she was ready for the leadership responsibilities that came with her new role. She was still only 21 years old, and the weight of commanding others in life and death situations felt enormous. Her first major assignment as a unit commander came just 3 months after her promotion. Intelligence had located a terrorist cell that was planning an attack on a refugee camp housing displaced civilians from several conflict zones. The cell was positioned in a heavily defended compound, and conventional assault would likely result in significant casualties among both military personnel and the civilians they were trying to protect. Sarah's unit was tasked with eliminating the key leaders of the cell through precision shooting, creating enough chaos to allow conventional forces to neutralize the remaining threats with minimal casualties. It would be the first real test of whether the capabilities they had developed could be scaled up and applied by multiple operators working in coordination. The mission planning took weeks, with Sarah working closely with intelligence analysts, tactical planners, and technology specialists to develop an approach that maximized their chances of success. Unlike her previous mission, this operation would involve 4 marksmen working simultaneously from different positions, requiring unprecedented coordination and communication. Sarah found herself drawing on leadership lessons she had absorbed from Captain Mitchell and Colonel Brooks, but also on the fundamental principles her grandfather had taught her about responsibility and service. When you're responsible for others, Miguel had told her years earlier, your decisions affect not just yourself, but everyone who depends on you. The night before the mission, Sarah gathered her team for a final briefing. Staff Sergeant Williams, Corporal Rodriguez, and Sergeant Chin were all graduates of the training program she had helped develop, and all had demonstrated exceptional capabilities during their preparation. But this would be their first real-world test of those abilities. Tomorrow, we're going to attempt something that's never been done before, Sarah told her team. 4 coordinated extreme-range shots, taken simultaneously against multiple targets in a heavily defended position. Each of you has demonstrated that you can make these shots individually. Now we have to prove that we can work together as a unit. The mission site was a mountainous region similar to where Sarah had made her record-breaking shot, but the tactical situation was significantly more complex. Her team would be positioned at 4 different locations, each approximately 2,000 to 2,400 meters from their respective targets, requiring precise timing and communication to ensure that all shots were taken simultaneously. As they moved into position in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah felt the familiar calm that had always preceded her most challenging shots. But this time, that calm was tempered by the awareness that she was responsible not just for her own performance, but for the success and safety of her entire team. Position Alpha Ready, came Williams' voice over their encrypted communication system. Range confirmed at 2,156 meters. Wind conditions within acceptable parameters. Similar reports came from Rodriguez and Chun as they reached their assigned positions. Sarah, taking the most difficult shot at 2,387 meters, was the last to report ready. The targets would appear at their respective locations within a 15-minute window, based on intelligence about the terrorists' morning routine. All positions, this is command, came the voice of their mission controller. Targets are beginning to move. Stand by for final authorization. Through her scope, Sarah could see her target area clearly. The compound was built into a hillside with multiple levels and defensive positions that would make conventional assault extremely costly. The precision shooting approach they were attempting would eliminate key leaders while leaving the structure and most of the defensive positions intact for follow-up operations. Target Alpha identified, Williams reported. Adult male, matching description, clear shot available. Similar confirmations came from Rodriguez and Chun as their targets appeared in their respective areas. Sarah's target, the leader of the terrorist cell, was the most heavily protected and would be visible for the shortest period of time. Target Delta identified, Sarah confirmed as her target briefly appeared on an elevated balcony. Clear shot available. Conditions favorable. All positions, you are cleared to engage on my mark, came the mission controller's voice. 3, 2, 1 mark. The 4 shots fired simultaneously, creating a coordinated thunder that echoed off the surrounding mountains. Sarah remained in position, watching through her scope as her bullet traveled the 2,387 meters to its target. Around her, she could hear her team members confirming successful hits on their designated targets. Target Delta down, Sarah reported as her bullet found its mark with the same precision that had characterized her training and her record-breaking shot in Afghanistan. The elimination of the 4 key leaders created exactly the chaos that the mission planners had hoped for. Conventional forces were able to assault the remaining positions with minimal resistance, successfully preventing the planned attack on the refugee camp while capturing valuable intelligence about other terrorist operations. As her team regrouped at their extraction point, Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond her personal achievements. She had successfully led a team operation that saved countless innocent lives while demonstrating capabilities that would influence military operations for years to come. Captain Mitchell was waiting for them at the forward operating base when they returned. "Outstanding work," he told Sarah privately. "You've proven that what you accomplished individually can be scaled up and replicated. This changes everything about how we approach certain types of operations." But for Sarah, the most meaningful recognition came in a letter from her mother that was waiting for her when she returned to base. Elena had written about receiving a visit from the families of refugees whose lives had been saved by preventing the terrorist attack. They wanted to express their gratitude to the soldiers who had protected them, even though they would never know the specific details of how that protection had been provided. "Reading their words reminded me of why you chose this path," Elena wrote. "You're using the gifts that God and your grandfather gave you to protect innocent people. That's the highest purpose anyone can serve." As Sarah settled into her new role as unit commander, she began to understand that her journey was far from over. The capabilities they had developed would continue to evolve, and new challenges would require even greater precision and coordination. But the fundamental truth that had guided her from her first day at the shooting range with her grandfather remained unchanged. Exceptional abilities carry exceptional responsibilities. The young woman who had made an unthinkable 2,600-meter shot that left a SEAL commander in shock had become something more than an exceptional marksman. She had become a leader, a teacher, and a catalyst for advancing military capabilities that would protect innocent lives for generations to come. And in the quiet moments between missions, when she cleaned her rifle and prepared for the next challenge, Sarah could almost hear her grandfather's voice reminding her that the true measure of a marksman wasn't in the distance of their shots, but in the lives they protected with their precision. The unthinkable had become possible, and the possible had become a new standard for what dedicated individuals could accomplish when natural talent met unwavering determination and a commitment to serving something greater than themselves. Sarah Martinez had changed the world one shot at a time, and her legacy would continue to influence how nations protected their citizens and preserved peace for decades to come.